Okay. Welcome back, everyone, to The Slingshot, a podcast by levees.org. Our mission is to offer coverage and commentary on the global events which matter most to you, our listeners. And today we're going to discuss the Bourbon Street terror attack. You all know me, Sandy Rosenthal, and today I'm delighted to be joined again by Mr. Rudy Vorkapic and Mr. Stuart Loeb. Okay, gentlemen. So, who wants to start with this really very sad start to 2025,
Well,
the Bourbon Street terror attack?
I think we both all wish we wouldn't have to start at all. Let's start with that. As a matter of fact, I wore these beads not just because Mardi Gras season began just the other day, but because I thought hearts and kisses were appropriate for my thoughts and prayers for the victims and their families going through an unspeakable tragedy, and on a time of just supposed to be great joy, especially in this city, this great American city. In my humble opinion, this is a desperate act by a desperate man who really ultimately will make no point other than to hurt people. And it's the next day following this attack, I was at the Sugar Bowl, walking the streets and walking as much as I could all over, and just saw there were fewer people. I think a lot of people at the game were, had probably had plans to leave, the travel plans and whatnot, because the game was postponed one day. But the people that were there were of a beautiful vibe. Folks were appropriate. We were going to see a game where we know how frivolous it ultimately is in the grand scheme of things, but life has to continue. And I was interviewed actually outside the Superdome by CBS News, and Mark Morial's wife, Michelle, her last name just escapes me, but I don't know if it's Morial, but they interviewed me just in passing, happened to pick me out of the crowd, and they asked me, are you afraid? And I just emphatically said no. I emphatically said no. That is just not something that even occurred to me to be. And I feel like, being a New Orleanian for as long as I have, and this is my 20th year in New Orleans, full time. I've been coming here since I was a junior in college. I love this city. I fell in love with this city. I used to be a Bears fan. Now I'm a Saints fan, and I like to say that the Bears have my soul, but the Saints stole my heart. And but one of the things that I told them was that this is the kind of city where we are here because we want to be here. We live here for the moment. This is a very for the moment kind of place, which is why it struck me that it was such a stupid place to do something like this. Ultimately, for me, I understand why. I understand the crowd. I understand probably the lack of security because he obviously scouted this out. But for me, this is a place that's been through so much. And the reason why we're even speaking here today is because of a horrible tragedy that happened to the entire community and the entire southern coast was Hurricane Katrina. That's how we are ultimately bonded just on this podcast. But we have been through so much, a giant oil spill. A couple of years ago, a drought that was driving salt water up the river that we didn't know we would have fresh drinking water, and everything in between. And when people pass here, we mourn by dancing, and we mourn by singing in second lines, and we try to remember the joy. Now, that's harder in this particular case, but that's how I feel, that this was for me, such a stupid place to do it, but just because of the kind of way we live our lives.
Yes. In a few minutes, we'll be discussing Rudy, you touched on the French Quarter was not as safe as it should be. And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But the only thing I can think to add to your beautiful description that was spot on was I remember in those few weeks, I mean, in those months right after the levees broke, New Orleans had planned to go ahead with Mardi Gras. And the whole nation was appalled. Why are we celebrating when we've had so much trauma and catastrophe and everything? And to us New Orleanians, to not hold Mardi Gras would have been like canceling Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's Day and New Year's
No
Eve.
question.
It'd be like canceling all three of those. That's what canceling Mardi Gras would have been like.
I couldn't
Stuart?
agree more, Stuart. I didn't want to.
Yeah, it was very accurate description you gave there, Rudy. That it is tragic with the circumstance of what Bourbon Street is and represents. As a native-born New Orleanian, I have had mixed feelings about Bourbon Street my whole life. It was I'm talking about the aesthetics and the businesses and the trajectory the street has taken. There's an excellent book on it by Richard Campanella, but the history of how Bourbon Street was developed. But the fact remains, it's always been a celebratory place, and it's warmed to me in recent years as especially after Katrina, because we all locals would like to say, I don't ever go to Bourbon Street. That's for the tourists. It's a tourist destination. They sell these drinks that none of us drink and so forth. And the few times I've been down there, just happen to be in the neighborhood on foot. It's a joyous place to be. People are there to have fun, and they come here to have fun. It's a destination for people who live in places where this would not be allowed. It never ceases to amaze me how our very mature attitude towards alcohol and carrying alcohol around on the streets. There are many parts of the country where you would not be allowed to do that. A Go Cup is unheard of in many places. So I've warmed to Bourbon Street over the past years, especially since Katrina, especially since we learned that the tourists were very important to the city, and it was great to see them back. And I still feel gratitude when I see any tourist, even if they're face down, passed out from having too much to drink. I have some sympathy for that, but they came here to have a good time. So for this to happen, it reminded me of 9/11, and I'm sure a lot of people felt similar emotions to having this news come across the way it did. And I have spent a lot of time suppressing trying to not consider the terrorist himself or his motives or even his name, and not a lot of time casting blame at the city, because this was an unprecedented type of event for the city. I think that terrorism moved from, or sort of domestic terrorism moved from the default mode, which seems to be run into a school with a high-powered assault rifle with extra magazines, to now we have secured against that. I think the police are vigilant about detecting and striking down people before they can do too much damage. Although it would still be possible to have this much carnage with an automatic weapon in a crowd, but that this new mode of using vehicles as a weapon has gained currency with people who want to wreak havoc. And I don't hold the city. We'll get to this when we talk about the security of the French Quarter, but I don't hold them. They're responsible for it, but I don't feel the animosity a lot of people feel towards the authorities, or lumping us together with some of the other incompetencies that we see with storm drain management,
Yes.
or the politics in in the executive office or that kind of thing.
Right.
I don't
And
do
on
that.
that note,
I don't see that.
Stuart, if I
kinda
may,
But
if
we'll
I
get
may,
into it.
but
We'll go to it.
this again reminds me to right after the levees broke, and we lived in that void for years trying to figure out who was responsible and why did this happen. So any media company would come up with anything to try to draw attention to its
Yeah.
publication and to get people to read what they had to say. And a perfect example is this morning, CBS rolled out, or maybe it was a day ago, but rolled out a big article with a headline, with an attention-grabbing headline. Oh, New Orleans had been warned that this could happen in 2017 and had a big report explaining how this could happen. And it's already begun, the finger pointing and the blame game. And really, as far as I'm concerned, it's just the media is just looking for readers and looking for advertising. And that's what that seems like to me. And I read the article completely, and it pretty much all it said was that in the 2017 report, that using a vehicle as a weapon was in fact, rather than go from memory, I'll tell you exactly what it said. Using a vehicle as a weapon was highly possible and moderately probable. And this was 2017. But has this ever been used in America? I believe it was once, and that was Washington, D.C. Y'all can help me here.
Yes.
There
yes,
was one
exactly.
incident in Charlottesville.
Charlottesville.
I apologize.
One
20
casualty
Right.
there, one death. Was Heather was her name, and that
Well,
was people,
that was doing that was doing
Street
yes,
fair of some
that was
sort.
the good people
quite
on
a few
both
years
sides.
ago. Yeah, the good people
Yes.
of both sides. Yes.
Yes.
So there, and not that wasn't that was a tragic event. So that's one event, and the other high profile events weren't even in this country.
Right.
Do I have that right?
Yeah.
So-
No, that's very true. Before we go into that more
Sure.
serious
Sure.
topic, I did want to also add on to what Stuart was saying. There's no way, shape, or form that this has anything to do with the people involved in what happened on New Year's Eve. But there is, this unwritten rule, or this well-spoken unwritten rule in New Orleans that you don't go to Bourbon Street after midnight, because only bad things happen after midnight on Bourbon Street. That I've been told that for years and years and years, and that has nothing to do. That is just a local saying that has been handed down for a long, long time.
Well, I'm happy to say I've never heard it. I've lived
really?
here. I've lived here
Cheers.
45
Yeah,
years.
Yep. No, I've been told that since I started coming down here. Be careful on after midnight on Bourbon Street. And I've been on Bourbon Street after midnight a few times, but
And survived.
but years ago. Hey, anything with alcohol and people and walking around, the later it gets, it's just the way it goes, So I mean, when you have a whole bunch of people all around the same place, that's all it means. It's just, but when people were asking me, "Are you all right?" or "Are your friends all right?" or anything like that, I kind of said it's been a long time since I had any friends that went down to Bourbon after midnight, which is
Much
but
less
I have
3
a lot of
a.m.
friends that were on Frenchmen, so after midnight.
I've heard the same
I have
thing.
a lot of friends who go down to Frenchmen after midnight.
Right. I've heard the same thing about Bourbon Street
Cheers.
most of my life, and then I was touched by some of the personal stories I saw among friends on Facebook, and actually I will concede this is one of the few times in recent memory that I found Facebook really useful. Was these people were talking about their memories of going to Bourbon Street after high school proms. I actually was down there in 1977 after a prom. Somebody had rented a room in the Bourbon Orleans, and we were walking around, and it was fun. It was novel, and it was celebratory, and it was a place
And
to
safe.
be. I don't know if I'd go that far, but
okay.
it was relatively safe. I mean, there was lots of alcohol. It's dark. it had you have the standard caveat in New Orleans where you don't want to wander around a corner and find yourself alone. Those types of things, as in any urban environment. So you had that, but it was it touched me that how many people had positive memories of being down on Bourbon Street. And two other things that I've come to realize. Once I was going down Bourbon, and through one of those places was playing, trad jazz up there, traditional Dixieland type of jazz, and I had always thought, that you would have to go to Frenchman Street to hear like real authentic jazz, but there's Tony DeGrati playing the sax up on stage in one of these bars, and I realized a lot of our local musicians make a lot of their coin playing to tourists on Bourbon Street. And Dr. John, in one of his later interviews, talked about working Bourbon Street as a performer in his youth. And I'm thinking, well, this is where these guys are earning their chops and earning their money. Yeah. And if you stand outside and listen or go in, there's some good music going on there. It's not progressive. It's not current, up to date, or what you would expect on Frenchman Street, which is a different audience and a different milieu, but it's a definite valid place to go. I've had relatives, cousins come through town, and they just loved going to hear the music in the bars, and hugely entertained by the huge ass beers. And took one of them bought several and brought them home to North Carolina.
Stuart, have you noticed that the business is down on Bourbon Street? The past that right now down from what it would normally be.
I don't think that's too surprising right now. I think it's being treated as a solemn place right now.
Maybe that's what it is.
That's really my feeling.
People may feel odd about having fun and celebrating right now.
I feel it. I think so. I really think that's it. I think with Mardi Gras season, I think we will, all begin to get more back to normal while absolutely remembering what happened and remembering and our hearts and our minds with those victims. I can't imagine that going away for some time, but I think we're going to have a Mardi Gras season that's dedicated to their memories, and I would like to think that that's what's going to happen. In terms of Mardi Gras after midnight. Now, I got married in the February after Katrina, and we had our reception at Antoine's in the what is now the Hermes Room, right in the front, before it was even the Hermes Room. And then we had the Treme Brass Band come out and second line us right through the quarter, and we drank until, with all of our friends and family, until almost 4 a.m. at the is it the Treme Bar, or the one on the street at the Omni Royal, and then my wife and I had a suite in the hotel, and that's how we celebrated our first night of marriage, and it was spectacular. And people coming up to us and wishing us well, and it was one of my favorite memories of 40 years of coming here.
I feel confident you're right, Rudy, that right now it's just a little too soon. Cheers. But I agree with you. Come Mardi Gras, we'll be back.
I feel that way with their spirits with us, and I think we'll all carry that for a while.
Stuart, you did say. No, I'm sorry, Rudy. Stuart, you did say you had a couple of points. I didn't mean to interrupt you, that you wanted to make before we moved on to the safety issue, which I do want to touch on because I got some intel just this morning.
Okay.
Did I cut you off, Stuart?
I'm not sure. One of the points was about the how much true entertainment is available on Bourbon Street. It's not just trashy. It's not trashy tourist dreck as is often made out to be. There's it's trad jazz, it's some real good rock cover bands, but this is something that even if we don't seek it out, it is definitely an attraction. It's definitely something for people to come and see. And I can't remember the second point, so we'll have to move on.
You'll remember it.
No, but I think you're right. The Tropical Isle, they usually have great cover bands. Fritzl's is just a favorite spot to take people to hear some traditional jazz. And then you're always surprised by street musicians that are going to pop up anywhere. And once you get past,
And
you
I'm
know,
going to mention
it, it's oh, go
giving a
ahead.
plug a little bit. I'm not making any money on this, that the Musicians Village has the Ellis Marsalis Center in the Upper Ninth Ward. And every Tuesday at 6:30, not every Tuesday, once a month on Tuesday at 6:30, they bring out new bands, new talent. And it's I just wanted to bring this you don't have to go
Yeah.
to Bourbon Street to hear good music.
No, but heck, Jimmy Buffett started out busking in the quarter. I mean, there you go. But yeah, there's so much, and once you get, it's amazing actually, because where this happened, those first three streets where this happened, actually are not are not really crowded at that particular time of night or in the evening, because those are actually more traditional businesses that are in those first three streets. It's after that third street, it's after the 300 block, I believe, where it all begins to get, well, that next 6 blocks is very loud, and you get some of the daiquiri bars and things like
correct.
that people are like, this isn't so much fun. But if you go down a little bit further, it starts to open up a little, and it gets a little bit more fun. You get to Napoleon House, and you get to a bunch of great other places, and
It's higher density.
Right. But those first 3 blocks, and had he been able to go on beyond those 3 blocks, it's unspeakable to think of what may have happened, because that's where the crowds really were at that particular time.
And had his bombs detonated.
Right.
Yeah, my second point.
So thankfully,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
He crashed. Please go ahead.
Yeah, the second point was, as I noted with the people on Facebook recalling their own memories on Bourbon Street, people my cohort, my age, there were also, I was touched by how many of the victims are local. I would have not imagined that if you'd said to me, who is on Bourbon Street at 3:15 on January 1st? I would have thought it was tourists, but it was a lot of local people.
And young.
And young. Yeah. I kind of would have expected young, because pretty much everybody is young now, but younger than me. But it was the local nature of a lot of these people out having a good time.
I admit I was surprised as well.
I was surprised and kind of pleased about that. That, wow, that's nice that people are down there enjoying it.
Yeah. So if it's okay with you gentlemen, I'd like to move on just to touch on what's become a front and center in the news, and that is the bollards, which, if you didn't know how to spell levees after the levees broke in 2005, now you know how to spell bollard. Those things that stop trucks and vehicles and people from getting into a major thoroughfare. So the intel I got this morning was that the new bollards that are going to be installed, in the process of being installed in the French Quarter, can only stop a fraction of what the original bollards could stop. It's my understanding that the new bollards are weak, and they can only stop a vehicle going about 10 miles an hour.
Yes.
I understand that truck was going about 100 miles an hour when it started. That's what I've read. So, and where we stand right now is, the reason for this is that the manufacturer, and their name is 1-800-Bollards, kind of a cute name, 1-800-Bollards, that's the real name of this manufacturing company, is blaming the engineering company, which is Mott, like Mott applesauce, McDonald, as in hamburger joint, Mott McDonald. The manufacturer is blaming the engineering company, and the engineering company is blaming the manufacturer. And that is where we stand right now. And it just proves yet again, you can't believe what you first hear, because it's very likely wrong. But that's where we are right now. Anybody want to comment on this?
Well, I just want to comment on the absurdity of buying bollards from a place called 1-800-Bollards.
Yeah.
That's absurd. Why just 1-800 police officer, 1-800-mayor?
I Googled that.
You're right.
Is that the name of the company? It is the name of the company.
Absurd. It sounds like somebody made a Google search, and it was the first thing that popped up.
I mean, 1-800 school supplies, yeah, but bollards?
1-800-Flowers,
Security?
maybe.
Yeah. Bollards?
Well,
And apparently
For security?
these can't even stop a flower truck.
Yeah.
And then, of course, just getting back to what these bollards could have done, you see this. Our police department has been adamant that even if the bollards had been there, and even if they could have stopped a tank, that this carnage could have still been done, it had been accomplished by somebody who had done the advanced planning, such as this individual had done. So here we are.
And that appears to me to be nothing but excuse making, because you have to try. It doesn't matter that, okay, anybody can do anything. That's not the issue.
Right.
The issue is to make it hard for them.
Right.
That is the issue. And probably some of these people, I'm sure some of them are people who are very big into deterrence in other areas of their facets of their being, such as criminality and penitentiary time. I bet you they're probably, a little bit more deterrent in those areas, and some maybe not. But that sure sounds to me just it's pure excuse making. That's all that is. And you have to do the best that you can do, and that's bullocks. Forget bullards. We're dealing with bullocks right there, and this is just silly. They didn't work, when they were installed. What was it? They said a couple weeks after they installed. I mean, they could have used that innovative tool called a broom to clean them out and get them clean. Who knows what they could have done, but didn't do. These were installed at the administration of Landrieu, and at the end of that, another guy I have a big problem with, but then carried on through this administration, which I have a big problem with, especially in this particular situation. I mean, we have a mayor. I know I'm going to get right into it. What's really bothering me? I think our mayor should resign just today. This is, she isn't here. She's $300,000 of travel expenses. She has a spokesman who makes $150,000 plus a year, and his entire job is to say no comment to everything. You can get a stamp from Home Depot that says no comment for $5. It'd be the same thing. Not one of the conferences that she's been to has anything to do with safety, and if it has, she sure didn't learn anything. I don't blame the police chief. I don't blame her. She's new on the job. In all sincerity, she had a yeoman's task in just trying to raise morale of this department, and has done an incredible job of just getting the department a bit more organized than it has ever been that I have seen, and I don't know how long, probably ever. So I'm sorry that she didn't know that those sidewalk bollards were there. That's just
these
terrible,
movable bollards, these movable hindrances.
Terrible. I mean, and even if even if those things can't stop a tank or anything like that, they're still there. And this guy would have had to have looked. He would have looked for another way to get in, and who knows if he would have chosen here, just because to get in that way may have been a different way for him to do it that he didn't like or didn't think he could get away with, or whatever it would be. But to sit here and say that, it's okay because they probably wouldn't have stopped him. That's excuse making. It's
bollocks.
Copping out. It's copping out. It's a cop out.
Cop out. So, Stuart, do you have anything to add on the subject of the Bourbon Street terror attack?
I would say that prior to the Bourbon Street terror attack, that this wasn't something that was top of mind. I've worried about terror attacks at Mardi Gras in particular. I've worried about high-powered weaponry, automatic weapons. That remains a big worry for me, and something that is ongoing. But as far as the French Quarter, fortifying the French Quarter to that level is going to cost more than they imagined it would. The perfect model to look at is the Federal Reserve Bank at the corner of Poydras and St. Charles. Look at their armaments, the concrete barriers. They have retractable bollards that do work because they are backing in trucks with either cash or bullion or whatever they do at the Federal Reserve Bank. But it is clearly a heavily fortified building.
And it's a priority.
and it's their priority.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also a little square rectangle or a smaller rectangle in the inside of two sides of it face interior boundaries on a block.
Yeah, it's
the
contained.
Corner, you've got Jackson Square, you've got every pedestrian mall, basically Bourbon and Royal. You have all these intersections, and these things have to be operable. You can't make permanent barriers because businesses need their vehicles to be able to get in and out during the day. You just cannot close these and make them permanent pedestrian throughway. So it was a prohibitively expensive proposition before. I think it's probably going to be interesting to see how much they really going to spend on this, because to get something truly fortified from wall to wall, sidewalk edge against building to sidewalk edge on the other side, that would restrict a 6,000 pound high speed
It's
battery.
going to cost you.
It's going to cost.
It's going to cost you. Excellent point, Stuart. And this will be a topic for another day when we'll be discussing the San Francisco highway closure on the beach in San Francisco. We'll touch on the subject the suggestion has been put forth to turn the entire French Quarter into a pedestrian mall. But that's a conversation for another day. Stuart and Rudy, thank you so much for joining me today. And I look forward to having another discussion with you again one day soon on the Slingshot. And thank you, the listeners. Please be sure to rate, like, and subscribe to this podcast on all of your favorite platforms, and we'll see you soon. Bye for now. Okay, I'm just going to stop recording.